Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Lady K Chat, a podcast that is designed for men and women to become better versions of themselves, which is broadcast every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Various subjects will be spoken upon, such as relationships, health and wellness, personal development, wealth building, children, and so much more. She is a 2-time Amazon best-selling author, an international speaker and life coach. She is Lady K. And now for your host, Lady K.
Now, while we was in it, the constant admiration, yes, was annoying. And yes, it got on my nerves. But this part right here, this is when he showed his true colors. So he walked away from the relationship. He came to me and he asked me, he said, hey, I don't want this no more. I moved on. And when I asked him, what do you mean by you moved on? And all he would just tell me is just what I said. I moved on. So later on, because we was living in the same house, later on he came to me and said, hey, can we agree that we both moved on? And I'm looking at him like, is he crazy? I'm like, didn't you already tell me you made up your mind and that you wanted to leave? But I start to put 2 and 2 together because by then he was having an affair. He had the affair before he broke off things with us. So what happened was, I remember one day I ended up speaking to the young lady and I see why he asked me, can we agree? Because when I spoke to her, she said, yeah, you two said y'all agree to break up. And I'm like, wow, you're amazing. But again, guys, we were still living in the same house. And when the affair first happened, I didn't know. I didn't know at first. But again, I put 2 and 2 together, and I later found out. But the key thing that I really want to elaborate is that this man asked me, can we have relations until he leaves? If you know what I mean. That's pretty bold and that's pretty crazy. So I started to realize what I'm dealing with, and of course I declined that. So I was like, no. But as we were living under the same roof, I guess he thought it was okay for him to do whatever because he had no boundaries. So I want to tell you the story. At one time, his car was down. So he borrowed his mother's car and he stayed out all night. He came home the next day. He gave his mother back her car. She was furious because she knew what he was doing and it made her late. She was going to church. And so was we, right? So she left. This man had the audacity to ask me, can I drive to church? Because he was tired. I was livid. I lost it. And, we got into a little altercation at that moment. And I sat down because I had to remind myself, he is a man and he is stronger than you. And you need to have several seats, Lady K. So as I sat there, about an hour went past. And then he came to me and said, I'm ready. And we drove to church in silence. But wait, it gets even better than that. So church service is over. We're about to leave. He goes to his mother and he told his mom, I'm so tired. His mother said, too bad. She drove me home and she made him drive himself home in his car. I'm sorry, in my car. And that right there, at that moment, I really appreciated what his mother did, because there are a lot of mothers out there who swear their son is this high and almighty. But see, the thing about it, she got to witness her son's behavior. Now, I know a lot of us, we can't say too much because we know the mother is always going to take the son's side. But in this situation, she got to witness what her son did, and she did not like his behavior, and she put him on blast. And I wish more mothers would actually do that. I really do. And I commend her for doing that, and I appreciate it to this day. And then I found out some news. I found out I was pregnant. And guess what? He didn't care, not once. See, when we first met one another, because remember, this is Christian boy, he told me he don't believe in abortions. And he would never ask a woman to get an abortion. But guess what? He asked me to get an abortion. And I said no. And I left it just like that. But he was so adamant that he didn't want the child. And he honestly didn't want nothing to do with it. And he didn't even want to acknowledge it. I remember one time I was really sick. And I was really wanting some ginger ale to soothe me. And I asked him, can he go to the store for me? And the store was only 5 minutes away from me. And when I asked him, can he go to the store for me? He told me no. And when he did that to me, I was like, wow, it just keeps getting better. But long story short, I ended up miscarrying, and I was just disgusted. I was disgusted with myself. I could not believe I was in this situation. And that was the end of that. He left and he went about his business. And when he did that, honestly, it was a weight lifted off my shoulder. I had peace. This was my new start and my new journey. So now that you know my story, I am now going to share that list with you so I can go over it with you, so I can highlight some things that I share with you in this story, and for you to also take some recognition for yourself if your experiences or somebody else's experiences. So remember, I told you they have to have this exaggeration sense of importance, right? What did Pretty Boy do to me? Whenever I did something, he made sure he turned around and put the emphasis on him. And so did Christian Boy. Number 2, the sense of entitlement, constant excessive admiration. I went through that with Christian Boy. He had to make sure he was the spotlight because he needed me to feed what he was lacking. The next one, expect to be recognized as superior without achievements. And that was Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy, remember I told you, and it says exaggerate achievements and talents. Remember I told you that he told me he was in sports, he was doing great, he was a senior in high school. Exaggerated. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys. Remember I told you he told me he was a year older than me? Come to find out he was 5 years older than me. Yeah, I know. And on top of that, just because we're talking about exaggeration, on top of that, he lied about his name. He lied about how old he was. And he lied about, remember I told you that he said he loved his mom and he had a stepbrother? That was not his stepbrother. That was actually his biological brother. And I found that out by one day having a conversation with his mother. Listen, ladies, I know sometimes we feel like we don't want to get too deep, but sometimes it's very important to educate yourself about that person's background because you just never know. So now, preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, or the perfect mate. We already discussed that, how Christian Boy looked at me as I was his trophy, and he made sure it made him look good. And they also believe that they are superior and can only associate people with special people. I didn't really go through that. That wasn't me. Monopolize conversation and belittle or look down on people they perceive as inferior. I didn't really go through that, but they did expect special favors and unquestionable. Yes, special favors. Oh my God. Like I told you, with Pretty Boy, it was always a reassurance that, listen, do you love me? Then you need to do better. So even though he treated me wrong, I needed to treat him correctly because, again, it just feeds into him. Remember, like I told you, predator, a predator needs a prey. In order for a predator to survive, they need a prey. And that's exactly what they did. And they both took advantage of others to get what they want. And they have the inability to recognize one needs or feeling. They will, let me tell you something, they will act like they're concerned. They would make you feel like, you deserve more, but that's not the case. It's all because they want to put the glory back on them. They behave in arrogant manners. Absolutely. Conceited, boastful. That was Pretty Boy. But I can tell you this. The both of them made sure they attacked my self-esteem on purpose. And again, they had to do that because they needed the reassurance. So now that I gave you some highlights on how to recognize and the traits and the things to look out, it is now time for this person to accept healing because this is what I went through. So I'm just sharing with you what I went through. So in order for you to get proper healing, number one, you have to accept. It's acceptance. When it's time to let go of the relationship, you have to understand that staying will cause you more pain than actually being in there and being manipulated and being abused. Why would you want that for yourself? It's so much better than that. God has gave you a gift for you to use on this earth, and sometimes it stops you because the person that you're in a relationship with, it stunts your growth. So you have to accept the fact they are never going to change, and this is who they are. And it's time to remove yourself from the situation. And that's when I say, number two, let go. Once you accepted the fact that you must detach yourself, the next step is to do everything in your will to make sure you do not come in contact with that person, and you have to do the inner work. Trust me, it was a battle. It was a battle, but you have to let go. It is an inner process to recognize that you can make it alone and you do not need the narcissist in order to survive emotionally. And number three, it's easy. Well, almost. That means no contact. For people who have children with a narcissist, take them to court. You have to go through the courts. You cannot do it outside the courts. And I'm going to tell you why. Remember, I told you they lack boundaries. So if you're just speaking and you're saying this is, hey, let's do this with the child, they will ignore you. They will not respect you, what you're saying. So when you put something enforced by authorities, authorities, they'll bend a little bit. They'll adhere to it a little bit better. And then at the same time too, it protects you and the child because you had to go through the course because you know what you're dealing with. And that's another thing too, knowing what you're dealing with. Once you come out the relationship, you have to know what you're up against. Your life is not going to be normal. I listen, I just want to be honest with you. Nothing is really going to be normal. There has to be boundaries between you and the narcissist. This is for anybody. It doesn't have to be a man, but in my situation, yes, that was the case. There are women out there that are narcissists, and men. I have these conversations with the ladies all the time, but men, I don't hear you talking about it. I need y'all to talk about it, man. I need y'all to drop in the comments, man, some of the things that you experienced with a narcissist woman, because your voice needs to be heard too. Because in a lot of cases, they according to the psychologists and the psychiatrists, there are a lot more men who are narcissists than women. But please believe me, there are mothers who are narcissists. And because of that, when they raise their son, this is how their kids develop the traits because of what they saw. So they just implemented what they was taught. So everyone, I definitely had a pleasure breaking this down for you. I hope this was very insightful for you. Please tell me in the comments, how did this help you? Please share this with someone if you know that they're going through something. And I just thank you for tuning in. Continue to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the visual show. And you can also listen to us on Apple and Spotify. You can reach us at www.ladykenterprisesinc.com for our services and products. You have a great night. Lady K.